All right. So we're so excited to talk about wellness and the importance of wellness for homeschool moms today with Deanna Hanson from Block Therapy, who has just really been given an amazing gift that she will tell you. I've heard her say multiple times that I think you were probably intimidated by a lot of people to get the gift out. So we're going to do our part to get the gift out because it really is amazing and life-changing. And Jenny and I both practice block therapy. And I remember I started first. And when Jenny started, she was like, Kim, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
So we are going to hear some things from Deanna. So Deanna, welcome to the Homeschool Well podcast. And we're so excited for you to inspire some moms. So I'm going to mute myself because I could just talk all day about it and let you say all the gems.
So you want me to just dive right in?
Yes, that's the key word that you always say, dive right into the fascia.
Yes. Okay. Well, I will do that.
I love it.
The first thing I want to share is just a little bit about my understanding of fascia. The world is definitely waking up to this amazing system that's in the body, but I still feel I have a fairly unique perspective on what the fascia system is all about from my 22 years of literally spending over 60,000 hours diving into patients' bodies, my own personal body, and uncovering an understanding that is really changing the game for how a lot of people treat themselves in regard to self-care. So the first thing that I really love about the understanding of fascia, I see it as being the cell membrane of every cell membrane interconnected. So from head to toe, we have trillions of cells, and each cell is connected in this matrix through the fascia system. So it creates both stability and mobility in the body. And it's also the communication system between the cells and all parts. And every cell, whether we're talking bone, brain, muscle, organ, whatever it is, fascia innervates all tissue in the body. So you really can't separate it from anything else because it is everything, literally. So what is really important to understand when we're looking at the body is how everything is interconnected and how there are certain cause sites to the pain and to the issues that we're dealing with. And that's everything from our size and shape to chronic pain, to how trauma is stored in the body, to just mobility in general, all of it. Disease, everything really comes down to having optimal flow. And optimal flow is created through space. So when every cell is in its perfect position, there's optimal space so that the cell can absorb the proper nutrients, oxygen being the most important, as well as release the toxins, the byproducts of functioning. So the system always stays properly fed and clean. And as long as cells are in their place and they're being consistently fed and clean, then they're not going to struggle. They don't have to send out pain signals. They don't start to undergo changes as a result of aging. But the reality is that's not our situation. So gravity, of course, is this driving constant force that pulls us down. And over time, we see the effects of gravity through what we experience as aging. And basically, because we're dominant on one side of the body. Sorry, I just had a thing pop up on my screen that just gave me a distraction. Let me get rid of that. Sorry. Because we're dominant on one side of the body, we don't just age in a linear fashion, we literally spiral down. So as the fascia is here to support both stability and mobility, what happens if we're not conscious of proper postural foundation and we're starting to tip off balance is the fascia will grip and adhere to everything in its path to create that stability. And it will grip and adhere to bone with up to a 2,000 pound per square inch force, which is just hard to grasp. To think that there is this incredible internal force that we don't even really recognize. Some people will recognize it as being a lack of mobility in a certain joint, or some people might not have the ability to kind of glide through life. They might feel burdened and heavy, but we don't really grasp what this internal force is doing to us. And it is in part here to protect us, to keep us upright. But what it's also doing is blocking blood and oxygen flow to cells. as well as it's preventing the cells from being cleaned. So now our system doesn't have optimal flow and it starts to become sluggish. So the goal of block therapy is to get to these adhesions, to melt them. And then through the process of blocking, we also teach proper diaphragmatic breathing, which pumps blood and oxygen into spaces now opened that we just opened from block therapy. And then we also teach people how to support proper postural foundation through understanding how to support the body when standing, when sitting, when sleeping, when moving in general. So block therapy has three parts: creating space that we've lost over time from gravity and unconscious posture, inflating that space with proper diaphragmatic breathing, that's part of the instruction, and then maintaining that space with proper postural foundations and how to strengthen our body in correct alignment so that all cells can stay in their rightful place, as well as when they're not, be pulled back to their rightful alignment. And it's really quite profound because as you start diving in through the layers, you really start to get a sense of what has happened to your body over time. Most people are only really conscious of the more superficial layers. Our brain can only really handle so much incoming information. And literally our bodies are full of pain and tension all the way from the most superficial layer all the way to the deepest part inside, because we're not aligned. And because those cells have been pulled away from correct alignment, it's kind of like they're homesick. And all of them are a little bit homesick, some to a greater degree than others. And for some people to a greater degree than other people, depending on what life has brought you. However, the goal is that we pull the body back to correct alignment so all cells can be in that communication system through the fascia, as well as be supported with that optimal space through the absorption and the elimination of toxins and food that is part of this whole fascia system and the communication with that. Did that make sense?
I just love it. And here's a couple things. And, you know, we are scripturally based. And so while you're talking about I just kept thinking, Jenny, you know, that scripture of all creation is groaning. And when you were talking about how we all like get twisted down and like as our bodies age, right? They are groaning. We don't even realize, like you're saying, when you start blocking different bits. I've heard so many blockers say that they have memories come up and emotional release. And so I think that until we get to heaven and get our perfect bodies, right, we're never going to feel perfect like that again. But block therapy is like kind of a bridge for that. Like if I have, like, you know, last year I was suffering with these thumbs. They were not moving, okay, at all. Like I couldn't do this. I couldn't grab things. It was a combination of a lot of different things, a lot of it emotional. But look, I'm able to do it today, right? And I didn't have surgery. Like I was able to, I love this phrase that you always use, turn back the hands of time. So I'm still groaning. There's still things, like I always say, this went away. Then it was my ankle. Now I got something else, you know, the other day. My ankle's feeling better, but blah, 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 blah. So anyway, it's a cyclical process that we know about aging. We're not going to, you know, it's not a miracle thing that we're going to suddenly pop back into feeling like we're 20. But it helps so much to create, first of all, confidence in like this default that I have. And especially when I was a homeschool mom, that I didn't have to take time, energy, and money to immediately go see somebody else to help me with a quick fix for pain. That I had all this like, the arsenal is what, right? A toolbox with wellness arsenals. So that was amazing. I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, no,
You're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
Something's calling me through. It says Zoom meeting is calling.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna ignore that. And as long as you can't hear the Zoom meeting, that's weird.
Nope.
AI is calling me. Okay. That's what I think is a good bridge. So for homeschool moms, that was an amazing description, I think, of how applicably they can take what you just said and make them feel like, okay, if I have a crack in my neck, I don't need to take out of my homeschool day right now. I have this strategy that I can deal with first that is going to help them feel better for that time frame. And then you put in like the breathing part of it and the maintaining even of like the jaw and the tongue. For me, that was a huge stress reducer. So yes, that was beautifully illustrated. I love it.
I think the tension that it relieves when you do it, for me, I mean, was huge. And not having to go to a massage therapist to have someone do my neck. I can do it myself. It does take time, but so does making an appointment and getting in my car and going.
And I mean, you might have to. I mean, you might ultimately have to go have someone help you. But for a homeschool mom to have that tool,
right?
So
that's
powerful,
huge. I agree.
And I think what is also, I love also where you're coming from, because I also love the fact that what we're teaching with this is God designed this body to function in a certain way. And I think that often we get pulled away in our understanding as to what that means. And then we sometimes become afraid of our own bodies that God designed for us. And one of the things that's so important is pain. Pain is the baby crying. Pain is not a bad thing. It's not evil. It's not awful. It's literally a message that your cell gives you to let you know that it just needs a little bit of attention. And if we approach it when it first surfaces, that's literally all it needs, is a little attention. It's when we ignore that baby crying that over time, potentially over years, through masking it, through avoiding it, that it then grows and grows and grows. And eventually it even gets shut off, as does that part of our body. And then that's when we're in more of a disease state. Another thing that's natural that the body is designed to do is inflame. When there's pain, when there's stress, when there's anything that's negative in the body, the natural response is to send inflammation. Yet the world still looks at inflammation as being the problem. I view inflammation as being the gold. It is where all of the healing agents are sent to an area for a rebuilding of that space. And if we don't assist the process, and instead, like I was trained as an athletic therapist to block that process for the first 48 to 72 hours with ice, then it's like, okay, you've just had a baby, and for the first 48 to 72 hours, you're throwing it in a corner and you're not giving that baby any love. That's when that tissue, those cells, they need your attention the most, and not through numbing or freezing the area, but through adding energy into that space in the correct way, which is how we teach block therapy. But it's really understand that God gave us this phenomenal body, and we want to drive it the way it is intended to be driven. And I think one of the most important things to understand is how to breathe properly, because pain, fear, and stress cause us to reactively hold the breath. When we're in pain, fear, and stress, that's when we need to be focused on breathing properly the most, because again, that's what drives everything in the body to be most fluid, to be heated, to be supported, to send oxygen, the most important nutrient. We die if we're deprived of oxygen for up to 5 minutes. And our cells are like little mini brains, like everything is a mirror of itself. So if we aren't breathing properly through the muscles of the upper chest, how most people breathe when we aren't using the diaphragm, then we're really limiting the amount of oxygen that we can send to those cells. And that's why we start going through this aging process. That's why we have pain. That's why we develop disease. So it's really just getting back to the basics of how we're supposed to live within our own bodies. And that's really what block therapy teaches you.
And even when I don't have time to block all the time, which I don't, but just the breathing, I mean, when I'm laying in bed at night, I can calm myself down, or, I just even the breathing and what you said about the inflammation, like that has been a total mind switch for me.
Total mind switch,
I have
right?
2 boys and they're constantly getting hurt. And so things are swollen. It just happened the other day, actually. I'm like, okay, we're getting the corn baby out. We're heating it. Take deep breaths, send oxygen to your cells, buddy, because we have a state swim meet this week and we have hotel rooms and everything, and we got to get you well. So he was fine in like a day. So amazing. Yes.
Okay. I got to say, and Jenny has always been a breather. We have taught together, Deanna, for years. And I, of course, am like the spazzy, blah, 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 and she's like the chill. And so after a few, probably just weeks of us teaching together for the first time, like we would teach the first half an hour together. And I always knew that I needed to dial it down if I saw Jenny in the back of the room going, taking a deep breath. And now she's saying she's always been a breather, but she's learned more effective
But
breathing techniques.
I was breathing from here, not from my diaphragm. So,
and it's a nuance that people do not understand. I have taught kids this strategy, and even at that young age, I don't know, do you know, Deanna, what age? Because I know babies naturally breathe diaphragmatically. You see their tummies, right?
Not anymore. And this is really where this focus of getting to the youth, to kids before they're even a youth, is so important to me. Because basically the baby is born with the mother's breath. This is how I see it anyway. The baby, as it grows, is attached to everything. So everything about the mother, now the baby comes out. So because today, like I'm 53. So when I was a youth and a young adult, I was only really introduced to computers when I was in university. So now the mother, let's say anywhere between 20 and 40 years old, let's just say, probably grew up in front of computers. So the posture as they were growing is very different than the posture that somebody from my generation had. The younger posture grew up in a collapsed way, whether it's on computers or phones, everything is being pulled forward. So already there's less space in the belly for the mother of today to be breathing. When I say the mother, I mean like the birth mother of today to be breathing. And so also less space for that baby to grow in a healthy way and develop inside the womb. So then the child is coming out not breathing diaphragmatically. And this is what I've witnessed. And in my membership, I actually, and it's so simple, I have a video teaching parents how to get their babies to start breathing diaphragmatically, because they want to breathe properly. That's how God created their body, and they're designed to breathe this way. But the fascia, if it's twisting and it's holding that rib cage out of alignment, they're only going to be using part of that muscle, not the full muscle, which is going to hinder development. It's going to hinder digestion, the ability for sleep, the ability to grow properly, to manage stress in life. So getting back to the whole proper breath, again, it is, in my view, blocking helps create the proper breath. The proper breath is the connection to God. And without that proper breath, we're not able to have all of our cells communicating in our system properly. So we start relying on memory and ego, and we get caught in a negative fear cycle in the brain. It's a different frequency, literally, when we're breathing up here than when we're breathing diaphragmatically. And I loved it because it was Eckhart Tolle who said, God lives in the moment, which is through the diaphragmatic breath. The upper chest breathers are connected to fear of thoughts of future and past, which isn't real. And that's where most people are living, is in this idea of what life is, as opposed to living each moment in the present and connected to that God source.
Woo, girl, I am like getting the chills like crazy. And it's so profound. I don't know if you know this about me, but in my 20s, I had debilitating panic attacks. This was before I knew Jesus. And I read every self-help book and all about the breathing thing. And it wasn't until I found 2 Timothy 1:7, which talks about fear and having a sound mind. And I would literally take that scripture and I would hide somewhere, like usually in the bathroom if I was having a panic attack, because I was training to be a teacher. And I would read the scripture and I would breathe. I would try to breathe, and I literally couldn't breathe deeply for the first few times. Like it was I had to be, until I created automaticity. Is that the word? Like until it's more automatic. And even now, right, I catch myself not breathing diaphragmatically all the time. But in that state of irrational fear, it was so hard to connect to my diaphragm to breathe. So that's what you just said
too is, when you even see other breathing techniques taught, often it's focused more on the in-breath. So we focus more on the exhalation as the more important phase of the breath, because that's how we move the past, the negative thoughts, the negative energy, emotion out, to create space for the in-breath, to pull in the oxygen and the moment. We need to let go of the past, though, before we can allow the present moment in. And so when people focus, like when most people say, take a full breath, they don't exhale first and then inhale. They'll inhale, and then that exhale might be like, where we should be going. And really making that out breath more the focus. And then that helps to squeeze the byproducts of functioning, the negative emotion, the past from the body, so that we can be present.
So powerful. So all of that, homeschool mamas, just listen to what she just said, right? And that relates to them in the moment, at the table, at the park, you know what I mean, Jenny? Like
bedtime. Yeah.
While you're in it, do it.
I'm still stuck on the thing that you were talking about with the babies not breathing from their diaphragm, because I can't even imagine how that's going to impact them developmentally. I mean, because as adults, I think I started breathing probably up here because I wanted to suck my stomach in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to look skinnier, but if you have so I was older, but if you have a baby who is not breathing from their full diaphragm, that's like a huge, that would impact your whole life. I mean, that's.
And I'm going through it today with one of our members, and it's so amazing how quick it is. Baby had hip dysplasia. They wanted to brace the baby, right? So I had parents doing this, and within 3 days, the baby for the first time was able to roll over. And you can see it. If you hold the baby up by the ribs, you can see how one leg, and this is probably true, I would say the majority of all babies today, you're going to see one leg twisting more than another. And that's an indicator that the diaphragm or the rib cage is impacting that proper breath, because this is what happens. We get twisted and we get locked. So by simply holding the baby, let's say, here's a block. Let's say this is the baby's rib cage. You take your hands and you just apply some nice gentle pressure with the palms on the rib cage, and then walk around. And if you can hold the baby up for 3 minutes and walk around, you're creating the heat in the ribs, which is what we do with the block. And then the act of walking and bouncing, then gravity assists and gets those legs to, get pulled down. And you're going to see in a very short period of time how different the body of the baby is. And that's what we want. We want the legs, we want the limbs to be symmetrical, and they won't be initially. So it's a really, really simple fix. And this is something I absolutely want to get out on such a greater scale. And
fascinating.
Thank you so much, because you probably have a lot of mothers here that might have little ones, and it doesn't really matter the age, right? Like, so of course you got to be able to carry the baby around. So I do have other videos in my Block for Kids section in the membership, where I also teach how to, if you're working on a toddler instead, how to work with the toddler on the floor to open up the rib cage and to get the flow going properly.
Oh my gosh, Deanna, awesome. You talk about gold. This is gold. And I have the membership, and I have baby great nieces and nephews, and I'm going to be picking them up.
Share it with everyone. Oh my God. We just want the babies to be healthy.
You're gonna be like, can't we leave them alone? No, really, this is amazing gold. And we're just so appreciative and thankful that you have, and we're going to be praying for you, because I know how the world operates in the medical system. We all do. And so for you to be able to stand up to that and just really persevere, I feel like you're a health warrior for us. Because it's innovation that scares people, especially what you're talking about, being a pain seeker for the good of your body. So, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I'm so excited this is the first, hopefully in a series of ways that we will be talking about block therapy on the Homeschool Well. And
maybe, I'm just putting this out there. If you've got a whole number of mothers that want to bring a baby on, and we can do it together.
Oh, yes.
And we can have a little challenge, like how straight are your baby's legs?
I love it. All right. Homeschool mamas who are listening, we actually have a voice message reply on the podcast page on the website. So you could push that button and leave us a message, or email us and say, hey, we're in, we want to do the baby class. And that would be super fun.
That would be amazing.
Amazing.
Share with everybody.
All right. I know you are a busy woman. I appreciate so much you making the time for us here. And
My pleasure.
just-
I think honestly, I'm not a mother, except for I birthed the block. But
you
honestly,
are.
hardest job on the planet. I see what, oh my gosh.
Right. And then
most
you throw
encouraging
in
thing in
schooling
the world.
mother, right? Schooling mother
and
is
it never stops.
never, right. And that's our point. That's what I wrote in the description this morning, is that we hear so many people say, even dads, we could never homeschool. It like never ends. There's never an end to the physical and mental pressure that you're under. So you have to learn. And Jenny and I learned, you have to eke out space and time for yourself. So this is
Especially
inspiration
around
to
this
do
time
that.
of year. Yeah. Around
Mhm.
the holidays, it just becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be, mommies.
Nope.
We are here to relieve you. And
That's right.
Deanna is a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
All right. I'm going to do a picture,
Okay.
a still picture. So say cheese
Cheese.
without my Pizza Hut cup. Oh my goodness. And then I'm going to stop the recording. Stop record.